Students are arriving at school with complex mental health needs, and administrators are facing strict state compliance deadlines, like Georgia's HB 268, requiring a structured response. To handle this workload safely, the American School Counselor Association recommends an ideal standard: one counselor for every 250 students. But in reality, the national average is 1 to 385. In rural Georgia, that ratio swells to 1 for over 500 students. Across those massive caseloads, that single counselor is expected to manage academic scheduling, IEP meetings, bullying investigations, college prep, and daily attendance outreach. Forcing a single generalist to solve systemic mental health crises on top of a 500-student caseload and daily administrative duties is mathematically impossible. It sets the counselor and the school up for failure. Administrators often complicate this math further by making a basic category error, conflating the duties of school counselors with the duties of clinical therapists. School counselors are trained to be highly effective generalists. Their proper role is to triage crises, connect students to resources, and provide brief, supportive guidance to keep kids on track. Licensed clinical therapists, LCSWs or LPCs, do entirely different work. They handle specialized interventions, like processing trauma and treating major depression, which require sustained weekly sessions. When schools blur these lines and ask counselors to handle both roles, students do not get structured, evidence-based care. They get rushed 10-minute interventions squeezed in between classes. Demanding that one person act as a daily systemic advocate and a dedicated trauma clinician leads directly to severe counselor burnout and compromised safety for the students who need care the most. We can objectively compare how a school handles a student in need by tracing the operational workflow of the status quo against a dedicated MentalSpace partnership model. This flowchart maps the initial stages of intervention. Starting with a student in crisis, the typical status quo path funnels referrals straight into the counselor's overloaded schedule, creating a bottleneck. This path results in two predictable outcomes: inadequate 10-minute hallway sessions and clinical burnout. Now, look at the alternative MentalSpace path. The counselor still identifies the need, but instead of taking the clinical load, they initiate a warm handoff referral. This path terminates in highly specific clinical support, a same-day response leading to dedicated 50-minute teletherapy sessions. Executing this teletherapy model requires a specific operational trade-off. Administrators must carve out physical, logistical space, like a private study room or empty office, to facilitate these remote sessions during the school day. However, by structurally partitioning the clinical work away from the counseling office, the school trades a minor logistical hurdle for improved student intervention and the preservation of the counselor's schedule. After the warm handoff is made, the partnership executes quickly. A dedicated therapist, assigned specifically to that school, reaches out directly to the student's family. Consistency is a structural requirement here. Students see the same licensed professional every single time, preventing the disruption of rotating telehealth strangers. The school counselor remains in the loop. They receive regular coordination updates, keeping them fully informed without forcing them to carry the clinical execution. To make this level of integration legal and secure, the entire data sharing process operates strictly within FERPA and HIPAA compliance frameworks. The model also builds in a safety net. Joint crisis protocols activate immediately if a student's mental health escalates beyond standard school hours. A true clinical partnership does not isolate or replace the school counselor. It surrounds them with a specialized team that handles the deep clinical work while keeping the counselor in command of the initial triage. For superintendents evaluating this approach, the primary roadblock is almost always finding the budget to pay for dedicated clinical interventions. The MentalSpace model solves this by shifting the cost burden entirely away from the district's general fund, utilizing external health insurance networks instead. The service taps directly into in-network coverage for major commercial plans and requires $0 out of pocket for Medicaid populations. This budget-neutral approach also solves immediate legal headaches. It fulfills the specific suicide and violence prevention requirements of state mandates like Georgia's HB 268. Achieving this financial relief does require an upfront commitment. Schools have to handle the initial administrative coordination to assist with family outreach and insurance intake referrals. That initial administrative effort yields high returns. It secures state compliance and delivers professional care without draining a single dollar from the school's general operating budget. Once the operational mechanics and financial structures are in place, the true value of this partitioned model is found in the measurable impact on the district. This visualization highlights the direct academic results. When students receive dedicated clinical therapy, schools report an 89% improvement in attendance. The well-being metrics track right alongside attendance, showing a 92% reduction in student anxiety and an 85% family satisfaction rate. There is also a critical secondary return on investment for human resources. Removing clinical therapy from the counselor's workload dramatically reduces staff turnover, which is frequently a district's most expensive hidden cost. An integrated teletherapy model proves to be highly effective on multiple fronts. It is a measurable academic driver, a solution for mental well-being, and a retention tool for staff. This final comparison table weighs the status quo against the MentalSpace partnership model across caseload reduction, clinical care, and budget impact. MentalSpace delivers clinical care, reduces counselor load, and protects the general fund. The status quo fails on all three. Administrators must act on this because it provides a financially viable, compliant solution to state mandates like HB 268 while stopping the expensive churn of staff turnover. Counselors should embrace this because it protects their jobs. It restores their ability to focus on the triage and advocacy work they were actually trained to do. This model is unnecessary for elite, high-budget districts that already maintain a 1 to 250 ratio with full-time in-house clinical therapists. But for the vast majority of overstretched schools, partitioning the workload through an integrated teletherapy partnership is the definitive answer. It offers exactly what schools need to function: vital capacity, not replacement.